What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pohada Podcast. I'm Matt Browse of Pohada Photography. This is a podcast where we talk about Jiu-Jitsu and other hard pursuits. Very often when it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. This time around, it's going to be a brown belt and my friend and training partner, Teddy Kim, talking about GLDMDL.com, a new platform he's developing to help us within the jiu-jitsu community connect to one another, connect to instructors and competitors of which we are fans, and also to become a contributor to their competitive efforts, a supporter of theirs. Without further ado, in just a moment, in this chair will be my friend, Teddy Kim.
Oh man, I miss having a dog.
Yeah, they're good stuff. Much as they are occasionally a pain in the butt. Like this, look.
There he goes.
I bet we can see that on camera. Come on. Get out of here. Opie, go lay down. Go on, go lay down. You don't talk back to me, boy. You get it. All right, Teddy. GLDMDL.com.
Yes.
Tell me what that means. Tell me what that is.
Oh man, I don't even know where to begin.
Tell you what, give me broad strokes, like functional details someone might need to know in an elevator pitch fashion, then jump to the beginning and tell me the what and the why.
Yeah, well, it's really meant as a platform that enables, specifically within the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that enables fans and athletes to become closer. To facilitate a less sort of opaque interaction between fans and athletes. I think one of the things that has, I don't know, I don't want to say troubled, but some of the trends that I see happening in jiu-jitsu are, I feel like it's becoming colder and more intimate, and it's becoming really hard to be a fan.
Colder and more intimate?
Less intimate,
okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Figured that's what you meant. Just wanted to be sure.
And I think, unfortunately, a lot of it is driven by technology. Like the way that jiu-jitsu is now, just to break it down to one specific dimension or frame, if you think about the predominant jiu-jitsu content out there, much of it is clickbait. And the two flavors that you see most will be things like, jiu-jitsu blue belt, dominates Aikido master.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one flavor. And then the other flavor will be, Gordon's latest beef with whoever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that's different. That's really different than it was when I started in the sport. And I think it's kind of unfortunate. So one of the goals with the platform was to have a way to cultivate a healthier jiu-jitsu fandom. And with that, and this is where it kind of goes back into time a little bit, one of the things that I took away from the pandemic and a bunch of other things that happened in my life around there was I just came to the realization that I don't want to live in a world where jiu-jitsu people can't make a living at jiu-jitsu. I know what that world is like, and I think that we can all collectively do better. So there is an aspect of the application which is allows what I think of as a micro sponsorship. And the idea of a micro sponsorship is it's an insignificant dollar amount, but at scale, it could really help an athlete's to bankroll things like registration, travel, lodging, insurance, all of the things that make it so hard to compete now. And And that's actually another thing. I'm kind of jumping around, but one of the things that made me start thinking about this was actually years and years ago when the point system started with IBJJF. And one of the for black belts, one of the consequences of that is if you want to compete seriously, then that kind of means that you have to travel because you need to go to all the opens.
Right.
And it didn't used to be like that. So the sport has become not more professional in the sense that it's something that you could sustain a livelihood at. It's become more professional in the sense that it's more expensive.
Sure.
And it's definitely more transactional, which I actually don't have a problem with. And I think the IBJJF plays an incredibly important role in the sport. That being said, one of the things that makes a sport grow and be healthy is competition and the ability to have a healthy competition scene. So when I started, I actually started at the first academy I went to was the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy when it was still in Brooklyn Center, I believe. And it was very difficult to compete around here. There was the academy had a tournament called Submission Hunt, and that was very consistent. I think twice a year. But short of that, there really weren't that many local tournaments. After being at Minnesota Martial Arts, I was only able to train there for a month, and then my job moved me to California. And I was living in Southern California, and I realized, it's jiu-jitsu is really different here. If you wanted to, you could compete every week. But because there were more academies, they had a much healthier sort of competition scene. But that even back then, it was. I would go to the Worlds, for instance. I think they still have the Worlds in places like in Walter Pyramid in Long Beach. And I would go to these huge competitions like the Worlds and Pans, and for all practical purposes, I would say most of the people there were from Southern California, just because it's so. It would be so
accessible to them.
Yeah.
It's close by. They don't have to travel. They don't have to miss more days of work, etc., etc.
But it's not like kids from favelas who are competing in those tournaments. It's people who have the means to compete at frequently at that level. So I was thinking earlier this week, but I don't watch a lot of jiu-jitsu right now. I'm watching a lot of Muay Thai. It's just something that sort of interests me. And Muay Thai is incredibly exciting to watch. I think that the reason why it's not a more popular sport and the level of participation is so much lower than jiu-jitsu. And I think that the reason for that is because there's no competitions. Very few competitions, definitely at the scale of some, even like the Fuji competitions. I've never seen a Muay Thai competition to that level. And that kind of goes back to the role of the IBJJF or other governing bodies. Is the reason that they're so important is because they can ensure at scale, they have the scale to ensure big competitions. And without the insurance, the competitions don't happen. And without the competitions, the sport becomes obscure. Right. And jiu-jitsu was kind of obscure for a really long time, but the thing that has, in my opinion, has helped it grow so much isn't the personalities and like the sort of obnoxious clickbait and stuff. It's the fact that little kids can compete. And as someone who, well, I'll put it this way, I feel like I've learned more important lessons in life through sport than I have in any academic setting, and particularly competition. So and along with that, in my professional life, I happen to work for NBC Sports Next, and so I have maybe a slightly different frame on the role of sports in our culture. And as a jiu-jitsu person, I want the sport to be healthy. I want it to grow. I want there to be a healthy fandom. I want to essentially, I think a lot of it is sort of making your own party. Yeah. When I started in jiu-jitsu, it was so wild. The first time I saw Ishmael was at that month that I was at Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, and I was a white belt, of course, and it's at a typical class there might be like 70 people with 50 white belts. And the way that it worked at that academy was there was a side room with no windows, and it was like a wrestling room with mats and everything. And at the beginning of a class, Ishmael would say, "Blue belts and above, come with me." And he'd lead them into the side room. And then at the end of class, we would all be, messing around in the locker room, and the blue belts and upper belts would come in from from the side room, and they looked like they had been beaten like rented mules. And all of us white belts would be staring at each other like, what is Ishmael doing to them?
Why are they hiding this?
Yeah. And it was cool. Like, and I think that would have been maybe 2009. And Ish was already a black belt, and we taught a ton of classes at the academy. That's where I first met Tao, although he wouldn't remember. Jaffe was there. Rocco was there. I think Rocco was a blue belt at the time. And then going out to California and training there was just more of it, but it was still accessible. Like it was the kind of environment where, you might run into, like Rafael Lovato at a tournament and have a conversation, and now it's, I think it's great that it's so much bigger. I think that's awesome.
But there's still a regional accessibility issue in terms of the number of tournaments.
For sure.
Which is where your point about the points comes in. So if I'm trying to compete at a high level and I need to accrue points, each of those points represents a dollar figure.
Right. I sat down with the pad and paper to try and figure it all out. But if you wanted to accumulate enough points to go to Worlds as a black belt, you're looking at probably like $2,000 minimum.
Like from this region of the country?
Yeah.
Yeah, just given you're going to have to travel to this city for a weekend, travel to that city for a weekend.
Yeah, just going to lots of opens. And, but the black belt situation is really challenging. I understand why it works that way. But as someone who, if you just want to compete, and that's part of your training paradigm is competition, then it still adds up. If you're a blue belt and you just want to compete once a month to tighten up your game, that it can get really expensive. And in jiu-jitsu, as you know, there are different categories of player. Like there are the people who there are people who have a primarily a fitness goal. Totally cool. There are people who have all your friends might go to your academy. That would be part of the academy for me is sort of the nucleus of my social life. And but then there are the people who want to compete, and that category of people, I think, is not very well served in the status quo.
Yeah, because part of the requirement of all that is that you travel and get hotel rooms and take a day off work and all that. So the brass tacks of it is, if I want to become a user of your platform so that I can contribute to somebody's ability to travel these things, how does that work?
Well, with the platform itself, I've pivoted several times based on feedback. So the way that I think about software is, because it's my job.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I think about it is to test into the right solution. In other words, in the trade, one of the terms used would be product market fit, finding the right fit between your market and the product. And the way that you find that is by testing and getting feedback all the time, which
Mm-hmm.
is one of the reasons, as you know, I'm always like sending out surveys and trying to collect feedback, because otherwise, what's the point? You want to have a product that really fits a specific market. So when I first started building the app, it was totally different. It was a just totally different experience, because the thing that I thought would be most important, which was confidentiality, people didn't actually care about. And so I did many rounds of testing, like alpha testing, with alpha users, and the feedback that I got was that sponsors, in other words, fans, you can think of a fan and sponsor as being very tightly overlapping
Mm-hmm.
constructs, but the sponsors wanted subscriptions, and the system was not capable of a subscription payment system. And the other piece of feedback that I got was that they want content. And that didn't surprise me, because the content is how an athlete can really build a relationship with fans. And from a fan, the content is what makes you feel closer to the athlete. Because the way that an athlete presents when they're writing or on video tends to be a lot more approachable. Like some of these people, if you catch them on game day, they're super intimidating. You might not
Right.
even necessarily want to be around them. But
Right.
yeah. So, all of that being said, I think that the application is going to evolve in ways that I can't possibly imagine, based just on the feedback that I get. But the core of it will always be to support the idea that here's one of the key problems. If you're an athlete and you're trying to fundraise to go to competition, the default would be to try and seek out a corporate sponsor.
Right.
The problem with that model is that the sponsor doesn't act. Typically, a big corporate sponsor is not going to help you with cash flow. What the big corporate sponsor wants to do is they want to essentially leverage your credibility in the sport by having you wear their shit. That's what it is. But they're not writing you checks that you can then use to pay Delta for your plane ticket.
Right.
So the corporate sponsorship is great for athletes, because the win-win, the sponsor gets credibility or legitimacy from the athlete, and vice versa, but the cash flow problem is still there. So the platform has to index very strongly on cash flow. There needs to be cash flow to the athlete, because as the sport evolves, athletes, I think, are going to start to think of themselves more as small businesses, which in a way they are, and small businesses need cash flow. So the cash flow is now, getting back to the subscriptions. The way that I originally thought about the system was that it would it would be, well, I'll put it this way. I didn't think that there would be any jiu-jitsu fan who would be comfortable with having a recurring subscription, like withdrawing money from my Visa and giving it to some athlete. But people wanted it, right?
Sure.
So
well, it's a subscription generation. I don't want to purchase a thing. I don't have to deal with re-upping. Just subscribe me to it.
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of the challenges with building a system of this nature is that I have a lot of generational bias because I'm so much older than most people. So being able to hack my own bias because if I were building it for myself, it would be totally different. It wouldn't be anything like what it is. But by trying to meet the market's needs, it's just has evolved quite a bit.
Sure. So the idea is I get on the website, I create an account, I follow certain athletes, let's say somebody who's a coach at my gym that competes at a high level, and because I enjoy the content they put up there, I appreciate the way they teach, I can then also donate $20 when I hear they're traveling out of town.
Exactly.
And I can also, if I wanted to, have like a monthly $5 kick. Yeah.
I'll give you, I'll try to frame it in a way that this is I think that this is a very important distinction, because I'll give you an example. As a software person, I'm a part of a platform called GitHub, which is essentially a platform where software engineers share code. That's what it is. But it's a community of practice that brings together software engineers from all over the planet. Because of the way software is, you frequently end up using other people's code. And as a gesture of appreciation for what this other person has contributed to your community of practice, I sponsor quite a few software projects because I could not do my job without using these other people's code. Jiu-Jitsu is very similar to that paradigm. By the way, that paradigm where I'm expressing appreciation for someone else in my community, that's not very transactional. Compared to something like, say, BJJ Fanatics, which as a digital marketplace is meant to be anonymous and transactional. So that was a paradigm that I wanted to avoid because that is the predominant paradigm in the sport right now. Having an appreciation model within a community of practice feels like a better fit for the sport. Because when it comes right down to it, we're all just biting each other's style. I couldn't. Yeah.
I was gonna say I am dabbling in X-Guard.
Oh yeah.
Exclusively because Yefim just sells me over and over on X-Guard.
Yeah.
So the next time, because he's doing it for real, he's going to be competitive. Next time he goes to compete, as an appreciation for that, I can throw him $20.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
As long as he has an account, and because I know him personally, I don't care if he's putting up content in that specific example because he forces his content on me, after we're done rolling, and it helps me. I'm beneficial, or it's beneficial to me. So there's that like sort of transactional bit of appreciation right then and there.
And that, I think, is something that is wholly unique about jiu-jitsu, is that there's this concept in startups, speculative technology, the Silicon Valley world. There's this idea of like your inner circle, and your inner circle will always be your strongest promoters. In the world of jiu-jitsu, your academy is your inner circle. They're the people who already want you to succeed. They might not even know you that well, but you're on the same team. They want you to succeed. And even though like the people there is no one at M Theory who I would hesitate for a second to support, because, and even people that I don't know that well, because we're on the same team. So that goodwill is so incredibly valuable for athletes, but there's not really a good way for them to leverage the goodwill that they have just by showing up at the gym.
Right.
And
right now it's a pat on the back.
Right.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah. I'll tell you, when we have a team in a big competition, I'm the person who crashes the IBJJF website, because I'm just refreshing because I want to see the results.
Yeah.
That's how engaged I am in my team's success. And that is, I used to think that I was weird, but now I realize there are a lot of people like me. There are way more people like me than I possibly even realize.
Yeah.
So understanding that dynamic made it really easy for me to think about this platform, because you don't necessarily have to have a huge marketing apparatus. You could do, if now putting myself in the place of an athlete, if all you did, like literally, if all you did was have the ability to leverage the goodwill that you have in your academy, that would be enough for most people.
Right.
Yeah. So now being able to execute on that vision, that that's another story. Yeah.
Sure.
And that's when it just like gets kind of like into the weeds of technical shit that no one is really interested about.
Yeah. And it's, second, third, fourth layer thinking right now. Where are we at? What is it? And how do we use it? And it'll evolve as it evolves.
Yeah. I like, I don't know. It was really, I won't say that I needed to start it, but to start building this particular platform. Yeah, I mean, pretty much with this app, and that's my general orientation towards life is I'm just making my own party.
I dig it. Is it a t-shirt slogan or something?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just generally I've always been sort of drawn to strivers, and drawn to creative people, and drawn to risk takers. So, it's easy for me to put myself out there, because particularly for my value system is so supported and reinforced through jiu-jitsu. So I feel like I don't want to be a person who's always taking. I would like to give something back if possible.
Which is the idea of the platform. It was a website.
Yep.
GLDMDL.com.
Yep.
And you're saying app because that's nerd software lingo, or is there an actual app that I can download?
Not an app like from the App Store or Play Store.
But an application.
Yeah, just an application platform.
You go in that direction with it, you think?
So one of the things that would, and this kind of goes back to the feeling connection. What I think a logical evolution of the technology would be some sort of streaming solution. It is possible to deliver streaming in a browser, but it would be much more reliable and faster in either an Android app or an iOS app, because you could well, I don't want to get into the nerd shit, but it would just be a lot easier to do it in an app.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's features you'd like to see in place that the lead up step would be to move to an actual app, a downloadable app.
For sure.
So let's pretend that I don't have an account, which I do, but I want to use your platform like a Patreon account for this podcast. What's my process in setting that up?
Now that is very interesting, and it's impossible to understand without talking a little bit about the underlying technology.
Okay.
So one of the reasons that it's possible to do a system like this is because payment technology has become so commoditized to the point where you can process payments at almost utility scale. Like I've built payment systems in the past. 10 years ago, the payment systems were much more primitive, and to build the system that I built would have taken, years, couple of years, maybe $10-20 million, probably more. But now, because of the advances in technology, you can build a payment facilitation system somewhat cheaply. Like I say that it's cheap for me because I can do all the work myself.
Well, sure.
Right? Yeah.
Sure.
But so the way that payments work is, as an athlete, you have a Stripe account. Stripe is our payment provider, and you would have a Stripe Connect account, which is connected to the platform's parent account. So when a payment happens on the website, what happens is you get paid out automatically on about a 24-hour cycle, which that kind of goes to the cash flow, which that's really, really, really awesome, because for most in the past, for payment systems, you might have to wait a week to get your payout.
Right.
And that just is not a great experience. So to sign up for the website, part of one of the requirements is you would need to hook up your own checking account to Stripe, so that there will be essentially a pipe that the money can go through from Stripe to your checking account. And that's really the main requirement, is I need a way to pay you out efficiently and in a way that I have a very strong systematic control that will allow me to not fuck up your money, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. It feels a lot like I'm signing up for effectively a Facebook account where I'm going to consume media, I'm going to provide media, but I'm also going to have it linked into, Stripe to my checking account, so that people, should they want to, be able to contribute to my production of said media.
Exactly.
And that's true if I am creating an instructional video and posting it on there, and then I'm going to go compete at PANS.
Right.
And my training partners and friends and fans and followers, my subscribers, can then contribute to that.
Right.
Okay.
And that actually, so to the natural question, if putting myself in the place of a tech investor, what a tech investor would ask would be, well, what is your profit model? Like, how do you get paid? And I went back and forth on this a lot. This was like intellectually, it's very difficult to think about, because for all kinds of reasons, it's very hard to think about a good profit model for a system like this. And what I originally had was the idea that the business, the platform, would add a fee on top of Stripe's fees. So Stripe's fees are 2.9% plus 30% of every 30 cents of every transaction. So they'll take 30 cents and then 2.9% of the transaction amount as their fees. So what I was going to do was add a technology fee on top of that, and that was how the platform would pay for itself.
That's what I would have guessed.
Yeah.
That there was some additional added on fee.
So I actually coded it that way. And then I realized when I first started working on the system, I was very, very, very focused on the sponsor experience, as you know, and I neglected the athlete experience because it wasn't a priority. Well, now I'm coming back to the athlete experience, and one of the things that I realized was I don't actually have skin in the game. Like I personally don't have an incentive to make the athlete experience better, because if the platform, if the financial model of the platform is adding an unearned, like depending on how you think of it, an unearned surcharge on top of Stripe's charges, then that I didn't feel like that was an incentive that would motivate me to do better work for customers. So now I've completely thrown that away, and now I am using the same system that you guys are using, which is I am also fundraising on the platform through my profile. So contributions to my profile are how I fund the operations.
So I can create an account and become a contributor to my buddy Yafim when he goes to compete, because he helps me a lot with techniques after class. When let's say Marcus from M Theory goes to compete because he does a good job teaching classes, and I want a rock star at our school going out and winning stuff, so I can contribute to him. Yeah. And I can also contribute to Teddy if I wanted to. Yeah. As a thanks for building the platform and helping to improve the community.
Yeah, that's the community of practice. And with for me, I also have some content ideas that I would like to play around with. So it kind of makes sense for me to use my profile to in software they call it dog fooding, in the sense that, hey, you built this software but you don't use it yourself. You're not using your own dog food. You're not eating your own dog food. So when I use the app as an athlete, I'm dog fooding it, because if I can't get subscriptions from my profile, then I fucked up, basically. Right. And then I would know that there's something wrong with the product market fit. So by putting myself into a position where I have skin in the game, it creates a much stronger incentive for me to improve the app.
If you can't use it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
What's your content going to be?
Right.
Series of dad jokes? Is that what you're going to do?
Well, I have no interest in teaching jiu-jitsu, but I use jiu-jitsu to teach my kids things. It's a really useful way to teach my kids things. So I wanted to teach them about the simple machines, in physics. I think there are 6 or 7 simple machines.
Oh yeah, I know all about it.
Well, like, I'll give you an example. In jiu-jitsu, everyone talks about how it's all leverage. It's all leverage, bro. But it's like, there's a lot of hand waving in jiu-jitsu. You may have noticed there's a lot of hand waving in jiu-jitsu, and a lot of sort of magical incantations. Mm-hmm. But I'm as susceptible to that as anyone, but I do, because I have this ulterior motive where I use jiu-jitsu as sort of a teaching vehicle for elementary physics for my kids. So I'm planning a video series that would essentially repeat the lessons that I created for my kids. So there is jiu-jitsu, but it's not jiu-jitsu. It's really more like sort of grade school physics.
That's pretty cool. Because they do jiu-jitsu.
With me. They went to the academy with me, but I actually really appreciate this. After I'd sit there watching them, and I realized my daughter has very, very, very poor movement quality. And to the point where
developmentally speaking, like for where she's at is what you're saying.
Very poor movement quality. So we took her out because I thought that she was going to get injured, and put her in occupational therapy to sort of get her moving better.
And when you shifted her there, they sort of confirmed what you thought you were seeing, huh?
Oh yeah. That's
interesting.
She's gotten a little bit better.
Sure.
I can see her going back, maybe in a couple of years, but right now there are certain motor patterns that she should be able to do at her age that she just cannot do. And it's, I don't think that jiu-jitsu is that physically demanding, and you can adapt based on like, if you're not big or if you're whatever, you can make it your own. But if your movement quality is poor, then you're going to get hurt.
Sure. What else do I need to know about this, Teddy?
Well, what I would like to sort of earnestly request is feedback.
Sure.
But especially for a business at this stage, feedback is so critical literally every iteration of the app has been driven by the feedback of real people. And my cadence is, because I have no friction, I'm able to, I ship to production every day without fail. In fact, I shipped twice today. So if someone had a feature request, it wouldn't, that felt like a good fit, it wouldn't be months before I got to it. It might even be days. But without the feedback, I don't know what, I'll just be, working on stuff that might not actually be that might not actually have value for a real person.
Sure.
Yeah. So right now, the app has, I'm starting really small because I want to work out my own bugs, and particularly to the extent that it affects other people's money, and I cannot make mistakes with other people's money. So I want to, we're going through a couple of, we're going to be in beta for the rest of the year, that just means that I'm going to be continually getting feedback from users before an official launch. And the difference between an official launch would be that as an athlete, it would be generally available. Yeah.
We always forget something on stuff like these, like tournament announcements when we've done them and rules breakdowns for tournaments. There's always something that gets left out, but I think that about covers it.
Okay. Yeah.
Say the website. Say whatever.
Let's see. What I would really like to do, this is on my to-do list, is to get big patches. As a
like gi patches.
Yeah, gi patches. The name of the system. The reason that I chose it was because I had a particular patch design.
Sure.
That was my only motivation. Was I thought it was
and like
cool
aesthetically the way that it fits on there.
Yeah.
No, that's smart.
Yeah.
It's like the logo on the back of this shirt. There's a reason it's this stuff shapes that way.
I should mention that I've been part of a lot of businesses, and a lot of them have been miserable, not because of the business itself, but because of the people that I had to work with. But something that I really appreciate about this project is that, the people that I get to work with. I just have to say, I don't think I would have dragged it across the finish line if it hadn't been for you. Because
for me,
there's this concept in tech of like building in public, and the idea of building in public is, the counterpart to that is if you're not ashamed of your first release, you waited too long to ship. And that because of my like pride, it's really hard to put myself out there and like ship, because of course, what if there's bugs, whatever, you know, you don't really want to look foolish. But the idea of building in public is like you just have to put yourself out there and get feedback. And if you try to have something be perfect before you put it out there, you're just never gonna get anything accomplished. So with you, you know, I talked about the concept. I don't know if you remember this. When I had my my bypass surgery, I started working on this idea, and I proved the idea to myself, but I wasn't yet willing and to put enough work to drag it across the finish line. At that point, I just thought of it as like, yeah, I could do this. And then we had a conversation, and I mentioned it in passing, and then never thought about it again. But there was a Facebook thread where you added me, because it was a Facebook thread specifically about fundraising, and you made the connection.
I
and
do
I was
remember
like, oh, yeah, I could do that. But at that point, you know, what I thought, and this is like so stupid, like all software people are susceptible to this hubris. At that point, I was like, oh yeah, it'll be like, I'm so close. It's like one iteration, and it'll be perfect. And it turned out to be quite significantly more work than that, and
Right.
plus like many successive iterations. But the point is, like, I feel like you helped me by through mutual accountability, and now that having an opportunity to help you with your project just feels really good. And I've gotten to work with Marcus, who, especially after my surgery, was just really, it was really important to be able to train with him. And Michelle, who's great. So from my standpoint, it's like a win-win-win, because I get to work with people that are fucking cool and who I see all the time anyway. And to be perfectly honest, like, for me, coding and jiu-jitsu feel very similar needs, which is like it's in my life, those are the only two things that I do where I'm fully in the moment. Yeah.
Well, so far the process of developing the app has been perfectly analogous to the purpose of the app.
Yeah.
Just this shared mutual transactional appreciation thing going on.
Oh yeah, that's the community of practice. It's so I've often wondered why the jiu-jitsu culture is the way that it is. And I think a lot of people believe that there are no, like, jiu-jitsu weeds out egos, or that it humbles, it humbles. I think there's some truth to that, but there's jerks everywhere. There's jerks at every academy. But the thing that I do think is truly distinct, that makes jiu-jitsu so, that tends to cause such strong cohesion in an academy, is because it's like how doctors and soldiers have such high cohesion and camaraderie, because they have a shared practice. They know the same stuff. They face the same challenges. Like, we all know, like, this to survive in this sport requires a lot of ego strength. And even if someone, like, you might not have anything in common with them, or you may even think that they're a dick, but at least you have that in common.
Yeah. Well, and actually, to your point of you're using the phrase shipping, shipping a thing. That's what this haphazardly set up video is about.
Yeah.
It's finally getting off my rear end and putting together the video version of the podcast.
Sweet.
So there again,
Yeah.
the whole thing cycles through.
And that's another, like, getting back to academy culture. I don't know. Am I supposed to stop talking?
Mm-mm.
I should say
Basically never. Keep going.
I don't. I'm pretty sure I've never had a conversation longer than 15 minutes, including with my wife. So this is, but
Breaking ground.
you might recall, like, there were two things that happened around the pandemic that I thought that really stuck out in my mind, which I just have to, like, draw notice to. One was, I don't know if you remember this, but when everything was locked down and Ish created that presentation, it was essentially a mitigation plan, a way to convince decision makers that there is a feasible way to keep academies open. And the leadership that he showed at a time where everyone was shitting bricks, it was like, I don't know, are we going to be able to do jiu-jitsu? I don't know what's going to happen. And when Ishmael, like, actually showed calm leadership at that moment and everyone else was losing their shit, you know, that really was, that's just one of those things that, like, stuck out of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that through much of the pandemic, being able to listen to your podcast increased my sense of connection with all of these people that, like when Kevin came on, I hadn't seen him in, like, months.
Yeah.
You know, I used to see him, like, a couple times a week. I hadn't seen him in months, and to be able to feel that connection with him through your podcast was really, really important.
Yeah, and that was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a boredom project in a way. It was an extension project of the Pohada photography thing, but it was also just like, everybody's sitting at home alone. Well, let's at least, you know, pretend to converse.
Yeah. I really appreciated that.
Well, good.
Yeah, and since then, I think it's been a really great, I don't know, I guess, community building, it as a way of building community and cohesion within the academy narrowly, but within the jiu-jitsu community more broadly, particularly here in the Midwest. It's been, I really think that it's filled a need that, there are lots of jiu-jitsu podcasts now, but they're not quite the same as what you're doing. So I think I'm very glad to be able to support you.
Good. I appreciate it. Give me some money. No, I'm just kidding. I think that about covers it, Teddy.
Cool.
We'll cut it there.
All right.
Thanks, brother.
Boom. Thank you.